Well, we'd like to welcome Ian Anderson to discuss a few points about his new album, the follow-up to the original Thick as a Brick, which came out in 1972, and he's just made a new album, curiously called TAAB 2, Thick as a Brick 2, Whatever Happened to Gerald Bostock. Welcome, Ian. Good to have you here. Well, it's a pleasure. I hope you've got some good, intelligent questions for me. I'm ready. Okay, let's go. Ian, well, after 40 years, why on earth did you decide to record a follow-up to Thick as a Brick in 2012? Well, you know, over the years, I suppose I've been asked a couple of times by record company people and I suppose a few fans about a sequel to the Thick as a Brick album. But it wasn't one of those things I ever thought was particularly high on the agenda. Indeed, to go back and try and revisit that musical style and the spoof affair of a supposedly 8-year-old boy writing a lengthy piece of poetry to which I supposedly set the lyrics to the original Thick as a Brick. Going back there didn't seem like a particularly healthy thing to do. And it's hardly the age, really, is it, of prog rock anymore. And that derogatory term, as it was applied back in the 70s, is something I think many of us would prefer to forget, even though the original Thick as a Brick was a spoof and a send-up, so got myself off the hook that way at the time. But anyway, it seemed like a good thing when I suddenly stumbled upon that notion. Whatever happened to Gerald Bostock? What would have happened to this little laddie? You know, what possible paths might he have taken later in life that would have led him to whatever? He could have been an astronaut, he could have been a doctor, a dentist, a soldier, a sailor, a down and out. And so I explored some of those ideas on the album, kind of parallel universes of what might have happened to the young Gerald. And it's, I suppose, a thought that goes through the minds of many of us, older folks, and indeed probably some of the younger people too, who are at that point in life where they've got to make some decisions or just adjust to the myriad of interventions that seem to beset them and cause a course of action one way or the other. So yeah, it just seemed like the right time. And who knows, prog rock may be, it's just making that bit of a resurgence, really, through the interest and enthusiasm of a whole new generation, a much younger audience, people who weren't alive at the time and have perhaps discovered that music through their parents. Not just the music of old, not just the peers of ours, like Yes and Emerson, Lake and Palmer and the early Genesis, but you know, the more contemporary bands that have taken that progressive rock idea into a more or less current age. Bands like Dream Theater or Porcupine Tree. More of Porcupine Tree later, because of course Stephen Wilson was involved in this album too. Does that answer your question? Well, yes, it does, Ian. That was very well said. Weren't you afraid that it could be just really the wrong time for a concept album, that in doing this, taking this brave step, that it might just get greeted with a deafening roar of silence and at best just plain disapproval from the fans, who maybe have come to expect something a bit more folk rocky or acoustic rock? Well, you never know, do you, until you try, and it seemed on balance worth giving it a go. I mean, the worst thing can happen is no one's going to buy it or download it. And when we perform this live on stage, along with, of course, the whole of the original Thick as a Brick album, the truth will out, and we'll see whether it's going to work or not. It should work, mainly because we rehearsed, well, in fact, I even wrote, and then we rehearsed and recorded the album pretty much as a live event, you know, to be played by real musicians in the studio in real time, and then to take it out on the road with perhaps a whiff of theatricality to give it a little bit more of a user-friendly appeal. We'll see how it goes. And the subtext, whatever happened to Gerald Bostock? I mean, what's your favourite of the characters that you've tried to evolve for the young Gerald? What would you have become if you'd been the young boy Gerald? What would you have chosen for yourself? Well, that's an interesting thought. I'm really not sure about that one at all. I don't think I would have been a soldier or a chopper pilot, as one of the alternative Gerald seems to have pursued as a career in the around Iraqi conflict in the rather sad song about the futility of war called Wootton Bassett Town. I don't think I could have been him. I'm not that brave, and on the battlefield I'm afraid I probably would have turned and run. Or maybe not. You never know, do you? Yeah, well, I don't think I would have been the down and out because I had a little spell of living moderately rough when I started being a musician. That really didn't appeal as a lifestyle. So, banker, I don't know, big business, industry, huge bonuses. Well, it might be a nice lifestyle, but I don't think it's for me. And anyway, I'm not really that fond of wearing a suit to work. So, preacher, possibly. You never know. It's never too late to get God, but if I did, I think I'd try and be a little more morally responsible than the character I refer to in disparaging terms in the pieces that are on that subject. So, yeah, probably not any of these would have appealed to me, except maybe Gerald, a most ordinary man, because there's no indignity in living the ordinary life, and in this case, being the proprietor of the little corner shop and serving the interests of the public, having some favourite hobby like playing with the toy trains while the wife upstairs cooks up yet another Fray Bentos pie. Always a winner. Yeah, probably Gerald, the most ordinary man. And somewhere at the back of it, I think I like the idea of being just an ordinary man. Who knows, in my spare time I probably am. And the name Thick as a Brick too. Did you give it any other thoughts in terms of an alternative title? Well, hey, that's a touchy one because it doesn't sound terribly original, does it? Thick as a Brick 2. Tubular Bells 7. You know, a lot of thoughts did go through my head, and I suppose at the end of it, the music feels sufficiently different to me, and the topic of the lyrics, obviously definitely written by me this time around, are a little darker, a little bit more penetrating. So I guess I felt there was enough difference in this new album without trying to strike out far away with a different title. Thick as a Brick. I call it TAAB, T-A-A-B, because that's long been the abbreviation on our set list whenever we play some little excerpts from Thick as a Brick over the years. TAAB 2. Yeah, kind of had a ring about it. And subtitled, of course, Whatever Happened to Gerald Bostock? Yeah, so good enough for me, good enough for you. What are the various Gerald Bostock characters? Are there any of them really autobiographical, or is it just things you dreamed up for him? Well, I think I kind of answered that one before, didn't I, really? I mean, touched upon many of them, but there is a degree of autobiographical nature in almost anything anybody writes. It's hard to disguise it. Some of those things just slip into the fabric of whatever it is you're doing, but there's never a deliberate attempt to actually recreate moments from my youth or recreate those moments of angst in deciding quite what to do when I was younger. Because I did have that real period, I guess around the age of 13, 14, where decision-making at school, whether or not to be an academic, to study arts, or sciences, or languages, or a more modern course of economics and geography, these were decisions that had to be made really early on at the school I went to. I mean, at the age of 14, how do you really know what it is you're going to be? Or even what it is you might think you'd like to be? So I spent endless hours in the careers room of the library, just thinking, going through the books and looking at the various options that seemed to be ahead in terms of what to do later in life. And some of them involved going on to university and getting the appropriate degrees. Some of them were more vocational pursuits. Silviculture, that was one that appealed. I rather like the idea of being a man who goes out and tends the forest and helps things grow, plants new trees and thins and fells, and something rather glorious about that intrinsic contact with nature in a purposeful way, especially looking out at trees, as I do here, that are 200-300 years old, and looking at a lot of young trees that are about 4 or 5 years old. I think by reckoning, there's about 30,000 of them out there, mostly oak and ash and other indigenous species. So I actually got to do that in the end, in a curious way, but not by physically going out there and digging holes in the ground myself, but paying for it to be done, because it is nice to think that there is that bit of a legacy that is kind of in place and growing. So yeah, I guess a little autobiographical nature in these things. Did I have a model train set? Yes, I did. Do I like model trains? Not a lot, but I can see the attraction for someone in their middle age who likes to stay in touch with childhood hobbies. So yeah, I guess a little touch of me in a lot of those things, but some of them are not pleasant things. And part of writing songs is also recognising about the things that you're not very happy with about yourself. It is a bit of a book that you open, and you open to others, and you show the darker underbelly of your character as well as the more aspirational and nice moments. That's being a songwriter. Pretty good gig, if you ask me. And you just did. Thank you. Well, that's the end of our first section of interview. We'll be back with Ian Anderson after this break. Thank you, Ian. Hey, it's a great pleasure. It's good to be with you.